director of the Moral Courage Project at New York University. Thank you for joining us. Where are the moderate voices that people have been calling for?
You know, I'll tell you, one thing that has surprised me about this latest round of violence is that for the first time, I'm actually seeing photos of moderate Muslims holding up signs saying, this is not who we are sorry, please forgive us. I have to tell you, Finola, I have never seen that in protests prior to these. So my hunch is that the moderate Muslims are finally beginning to let their voices be heard, and that journalists are finally covering that aspect of the ongoing story.
There's also the flip side of that, because our reporter Ben Wiedemann, for example, in Cairo would say that while we've heard from Egyptian President Morsi, Hillary Clinton saying that this film had nothing to do with the United States government, that the message hasn't been getting through. So what do you say to those that say that what is happening on the streets is actually more mob power rather than any intellectual discussion of Islamic theology?
Well, of course it's not any intellectual discussion of Islamic or any other theology. There is very little rationality involved. This is mostly, if not all, emotion. And this is what violence does. It is contagious. It spreads like wildfire. What we're seeing beyond Egypt, Libya, and Yemen are now copycat protests, probably fueled in some part by incendiary comments and slogans shouted by clerics here or there. But there is nothing intellectual about this. This is exactly why I, as a reform-minded Muslim, take so much strength from the fact that moderates are beginning to step up and insist that their voices be covered as well.
Okay, so is there a question here of various struggles within Islam? Islam is not speaking with one voice. For example, you have pointed out in the past that only 20% of the world's Muslims are actually Arabs, yet in many ways they seem to dominate the political landscape, if not the reality landscape on the ground.
Right. I wouldn't go as far as to suggest that anything we're seeing right now indicates that non-Arab Muslims are also making themselves heard with their own local, cultures and voices. Not at all. But clearly, there is a showdown going on now, and this is part and parcel of the painful growth that is democracy. There is a showdown between those who resort to violence and those who insist on having peaceful conversations about what's really plaguing any of these societies. And one message that I would add here, Finola, which seems so obvious but clearly isn't to those who operate only on emotion, is that if you are angry about the violent image that Islam already has, resorting to more violence in order to make your anger known only reinforces what you're angry about in the first place. This is what we're dealing with. Okay. No rationality, all emotion.
But some would say that what many are angry about, whether you believe them or not, of course, is this film, this amateur American movie that was made in the United States. What do you say to those in the United States about free speech and its coexistence with this kind of film?
Oh, I say to everybody, not just in the United States, that free speech is a universal human right. You can be offended all you want, but the fact is that offense is not the same thing as discrimination. And by the way, any point of view that a Muslim may have also will offend some non-Muslims. But you don't see non-Muslims launching, Molotov cocktails at Muslims simply because they feel offended by any point of view we may espouse.
All right.
So again, we've got to, realize that if we want to be respected, we have got to offer that respect too. And the Quran, by the way, is very clear about this point.
A final question, though, on the situation in terms of when we ask who the moderates are, you say they're the people in the public. But how do you calm this situation down, which appears to be spreading as this week draws to a close?
You know, I'm no fan of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I don't think I ever will be. But I think they're very, very smart in sending the message to the United States that we offer our condolences because, at the end of the day, they need to continue receiving foreign aid from the United States. And they need this in order to begin repairing their own highly damaged economy. And the reason this is important is that so many of the young men who are part and parcel of this violence are really operating out of a sense of deep frustration about their unemployment situation, their lack of prospects, which has nothing to do with so-called imperialism by America or Israel. But again, this is the emotion that is being vented, and we've got to get to the root of the problem, which is the frustration that a great number of the public have in many parts of the Muslim world. And that is an issue that Muslims have to take ownership of and step up and embrace the responsibility for.
Irshad Manji in New York, thank you very much indeed for joining us there.
Thank you.
You are watching